So, hi and welcome to Poetry Passages. I'm Clifford Rames, and I'm so excited to be here today with Skye Jackson. Skye is a poet born and raised in New Orleans, Louisiana. Her first collection of poetry, A Faster Grave, is now out and available from Antenna, and I will put the link to that in the information section below the video. Skye's work has appeared in a number of journals, as well as the I Am New Orleans anthology, which is awesome. She was also a finalist for the 2020 Rattle Poetry Prize, and in 2021, she won the AWP Intro Journals Award. Poets and Writers magazine has recognized her as a New Orleans poet to watch. And we here at Poetry Passages have been watching also. In case you missed it, I did read the title poem from A Faster Grave back in episode 89. So it's an honor to have you with us today, Skye. Thanks so much for coming on the program and welcome.
Thank you for having me. This is so exciting. I've been looking forward to this and
Me
I'm
too.
just happy to be here with you.
Awesome. So can you tell us more about you? Tell us about Skye Jackson, who you are, the person, poet, some of your influences, stuff like that.
Okay, well, I'm Skye, as everyone knows. I've been writing since I was 14 years old. I always wanted to be an artist, but I thought I would be a visual artist. And I remember my mom sitting me down when I was like 13 and be like, no, you're a writer. You're a writer. And ever since then, I've just kind of been working and honing my craft. I studied poetry in college. After college, I went to law school, and then after law school, I went to get my MFA, which I just graduated from this past May.
Oh, congratulations.
So I've been kind of like, it's just been like a whirlwind of a year, in many different ways. So I wrapped up my thesis and all of the madness and craziness that comes along with that. But I'm really affected by, I guess, as a poet, the poetry that moves me is like I love to write about love. I love to write about race. I love to write about the way that people interact with each other. Sometimes I like to indict other people and myself in my poetry. And so that's the kind of poetry that sort of draws me and that I'm kind of influenced by, I guess you could say.
Yeah, yeah. Well, so a lot of your poems, like as you mentioned, a lot of poems in the Faster Grave touch upon several different themes, including lost love, desire to be loved, death, Black experience, and personal redemption. And there's a lot of vulnerability and defiance also, including some flipping the birds. Illustrations. I mean, you'll see the book is nicely illustrated. A couple of illustrations where there's someone actually flipping the bird to accompany the poem. So a little defiance there. What story did you hope to tell with A Faster Grave through the arc of the poems?
A Faster Grave is a journey. I started writing that book when I at that time I didn't know it would be a book.
Mhm.
But I started writing it when I lived in Los Angeles a few years ago, and I hadn't been writing for a number of years. I had been going through like some personal tragedies. And so I felt like I couldn't write. And then I moved to LA. I was kind of living this like whirlwind life and I ended up like falling in love with this guy. And that kind of like opened me back up again and I started kind of like trying to access my creative life and my emotional life again. And a lot of the poems that you see in A Faster Grave are poems from that period where I was just kind of dipping my toe back into like writing again and trying to stretch my legs. So I guess I wanted to show a journey. Like there's the narrator is like coming back home, from having had all of these experiences and done all of these things and wondering like the way many of us do, what's next for me, in
Right.
love and life and an experience with family. So that was kind of what I was trying to do with Faster Grave and also kind of like shed some light on love and shed some light on heartbreak, because it's such a universal experience. And I feel like that's the way I use my poetry to connect with other people.
Yeah, there definitely is a sense of personal redemption, but of someone who's just come out of something very difficult, who has hope, but there's also a little touch of skepticism, a little touch of cynicism, and a little touch of defiance, and it comes through nicely.
Thank you.
Yeah. So throughout the book, you have these little things called sky verbs. Tell us about a sky verb. What's that?
I grew up in a very religious home. And so my mom, she was always like reading the Bible. She was always like taking us to church and all of these things. So I grew up like with this very strong familiarity about the Bible. And so I've always been fascinated with Proverbs,
Right.
and so I kind of found myself like wanting to co-opt that a little bit and, just kind of have my own way with it.
Right.
And so Sky Verbs is like my response to that. Like as like a millennial Black girl, like what are my proverbs? What do other people like me need to hear sometimes? And so that is kind of how it came about with me kind of trying to co-opt this biblical language and
Sure.
make it kind of accessible, but also show like the speaker's power, and being able to like co-opt that language and make it their own.
Right. Right. Sort of like personal mantras in a way.
Yeah, like not I wouldn't say they're affirmations,
Mhm.
but they're kind of like observations, like powerful observations.
Right.
That makes sense.
Cool. Yeah. So it's been like 2 years since your book came out. Can you believe that?
I can't. Time is flying by so
Time is
fast.
flying, boy. So how has seeing your work in print affected you since the publication of your book, and how have you evolved as a poet in those 2 years?
Well, when I first published A Master Grave, I was still in my first year of my master's program.
Yeah.
So it was kind of crazy that I was starting school, but like this big thing was happening. And I think when you get published that way, it just awakens you to want to be published more. You're like, oh my gosh, now I'm like addicted to this. Before you do it, it's like, I don't know. Does anyone get published? Like, who are these people that are famous? How do they do this? And so I think whenever I get published, it kind of lights a fire under me to like
Sure.
keep on, like to
You
keep
want more?
going, to keep like wanting that. And so I think that's what that did for me at that time. It just kind of like awakened a side of me that was like, wow, this is what I want to do. This is like who I am. I love this feeling of like of accomplishment and of getting my work out in the world and people seeing it and responding to it and liking it. It was just, it's like a really nice feeling as a writer to be validated sometimes because it doesn't often happen.
Well, on that note, one of your newer poems was recently nominated by Fine Print Press for the Pushcart Prize. Is that right?
Yes.
Well, congratulations. That's
Thank you.
super
I
exciting.
was so surprised.
Well, yeah, tell us about your reaction to the news and which poem it was. Tell us about the poem.
Well, the poem is called The Refrain Still Plays. And, last year I was living in Vermont and I was kind of responding to the protests that were going on when I first moved there, George Floyd and the murder of Breonna Taylor, and the poem is kind of like me trying to like wrestle with those feelings and wrestle with like I don't know, just like the pain that I felt about that and being a Black woman in America and sometimes feeling like really powerless and always being reminded of the violence against Black bodies, in even the most like innocuous of ways. And so I think the poem is trying to get at that in some sense.
Mhm. Well, would you like to read it for us?
Yes, okay, let me like pull
The poem
this
is called
up.
"Refrain Still Plays," correct? Yeah.
Yes, the refrain still plays. Let me
Yeah.
do my little scrolly scroll here. See. Okay. The refrain still plays. I try to tell you about my anxieties when we watch old episodes of The X Files and scary 90s TV. Even though we are in the middle of Vermont, I tell you, we should close the screen and lock the door. Because I know if the police could find Brianna, they could find me easier. I search for my name on a list of 100 Black women and girls killed by police. When I come across a last name, Jackson, I know it could be me. I know it could be me. And towards the end of the night, when we drink wine and laugh, I think of George Floyd when you asked me if we should watch another episode of Daria. The refrain still plays. You're standing on my neck. You're standing on my neck. And that's the poem.
Wonderful. Thank you. Beautiful, powerful poem.
Thank you.
Good luck with the nomination.
Thank you. It would be great to win.
Well, and some other big news, and this is a little bit older news, but former U.S. Poet Laureate Billy Collins selected one of your poems for the Library of Congress's Poetry 180 project. Tell us about that experience. How did that happen, and what was the poem that was selected?
I still don't really know how that happened. I remember it was over the summer, and I remember I was like getting up out of bed, or I was just checking my phone. You check your phone in the morning, like, oh, what time is it? What's happening? And then I just see Library of Congress, like an email, and I'm like, oh, this must be some like weird spam thing. I don't know what it is. And so the email says like, hello from the Library of Congress. And I'm like, okay, hello, Library of Congress, And I opened it and it's like, oh yeah, Billy Collins wants to include your poem in this. And I'm like, wait, Billy Collins wants to do what with my what? I think I like fell out of bed. Like I was just like, is this happening? Like it wasn't anything that I applied for or
wow, it just kind of
like
happened.
it just literally, I guess he saw my poem online and liked it and included me in this program because I didn't even know this program existed. Like I knew nothing. It was just like the most like I mean I don't want to say random, but it was just such a surprise on every level, and I just feel so honored to be included. And to have been selected for this, it's just the world is just such a mysterious, funny place sometimes.
I'm not sure how they number them, but it's poem number 11. I don't know if it's on the new online. I guess they're adding a new collection because they've had the books published, but now they're doing an online edition. Your poem is number 11.
Yeah, I was so shocked. Yeah. I was so shocked by that. Yeah, I was like, right. I think they added Ada Limon and like there were 4 other people, and I'm like, well, how am I in this category of people? I was like it was like Tracy Smith, and I was like, I'm like, this is wild,
Well, it's well deserved.
Right.
It's a wonderful poem, and I would hope you would read it for us.
Thank you.
So it's called "Can We Touch Your Hair?" Correct?
Yes.
And would you like to read that for us?
Yes. Okay. Let me scroll here. So just for some context for everyone, this poem takes place in New Orleans, which is where I'm from, during Mardi Gras, which is like a big like a big outside party where crazy things happen. Can we touch your hair? At the parades, everyone wants to touch my hair. On the corner of St. Charles and Marengo, I am cold and smashed and puffy AF. When 2 white women try to convince me that they love my hair, no, they really, really do, they say, because it is so black and thick and curly and soaking up all of the water in the damp air. The mousy one says through an Alabama drawl, God, you can do so much with it. And her blonde friend says, you can't do a damn thing with mine, won't even hold a curl. She runs away to grab another friend and says to her, Stacy, isn't it even prettier than Macy Gray's? We just love her, don't we? They circle me and ask, can we touch your hair? Then, suddenly, just like my ancestors long ago, I am pulled apart, soft, by pale hands from all directions.
Wow, amazing.
Thank you.
Oh, well, bravo, well deserved. Poetry 180, Library of Congress, great edition. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. It's an honor. It still blows my mind when I think about it.
Well, it's an honor for us for you to be here. And just to wrap up, tell us what's next for you. Anything new in the works? A new book, perhaps? Or...
I had been on a little bit of a hiatus because I had started a new job over the summer.
Sure.
And then, of course, I just graduated from my MFA program, so I was kind of like overlooking at my thesis. I'm like, I don't want to look at these poems anymore, after having spent the year just like tweaking them over and over again. But now I'm coming out of that. I've started writing again. I went through a really crazy time in New Orleans. There was like a hurricane. I had to like leave home, and like it was just crazy. And so now what I'm trying to do is compile a series of poems about that experience, because it all ironically happened on the anniversary of Katrina again, this most recent hurricane. And I think I'm thinking about it, from when I was like 15 and Katrina happened, and now I'm 31, and then I have to like kind of revisit those feelings and those emotions, but like as an adult, and so all of this has kind of been swirling. And so, so I've been working on poems just about my experiences during that period and even now,
The world has changed so much since your last book. How have current events influenced you as a poet right now?
Oh my gosh, I haven't really, I try to, I guess I think some way that it's influenced me is that like I tend to get my energy as a poet from other poets.
Mm-hmm.
And I tended to like go to a lot of poetry readings, and like try to engage with other poets and listen to what they were working on, and it would inspire me. And I think that has been the most difficult part of the pandemic, is not really having access to that in the same way, or like being over Zoom, it's kind of like the energy is different. It's just different, and like not having that community. And I think that has kind of affected my poetry in a sense, but current events, life is it's just so crazy. Like the chaos never ends. And I'm always trying to process that, on like a global level and an intimate level. And so I guess that's what I'm trying to do right now, is with these new poems that I'm working on. Just
like, write about,
yeah, let me just try to like get a handle on this in some way,
Hopefully we'll get back to live poetry readings, and hopefully we'll be able to get you live one day in person. Poetry Passages. You're always welcome back.
Oh, thank you. I would love to come back.
Anytime. Thank you so much, Skye. This has been a great pleasure.
Thank you for having me. This is wonderful.
Thanks to everyone for watching, and we hope you enjoyed this episode with Skye Jackson, and we'll see you again real soon right here on Poetry Passages.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.